sports teams' valuations are skyrocketing. The WNBA teams are skyrocketing, MLS teams, NBA teams. All of these sports are skyrocketing in franchise values. It's pricing out many of our billionaires.
Which is a funny thing to say.
When billionaires can't buy a sports team for their hometown, what is the world coming to? Should we put a GoFundMe?
for Jeff Bezos so he can buy the Sonics? Wow, that's going to be a hard one to get behind. Welcome to GeekWire. I'm GeekWire co-founder Todd Bishop. We are coming to you from Seattle. In fact, we're coming to you from the University of Washington, Foster School of Business.
Yeah, welcome.
Yeah, thank you. So our guest today is Jeff Shulman. He is a professor of marketing at the University of Washington's Foster School of Business, founding director of the Product Management Center, and in his spare time, he's been a civic catalyst on issues ranging from the return of the Sonics to the push for greater equity in Seattle's growth. Jeff, it's great to have you here.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
So a lot of folks may know you from some podcasts you've done over the years, the Seattle Growth Podcast and Product Management Podcast that you did for a while. But just so people know, the reason Jeff and I reconnected, is that we were just about half an hour ago in the KUOW studios, the public radio station here in Seattle, recording an episode of the Seattle Now podcast, their Casual Friday episode with Patricia Murphy, the host there. And Jeff and I were chatting on email beforehand, and I asked him, hey, we should sit down and talk about business and tech after we do that.
So this is the Seattle Now after party.
Exactly. So it's too bad Patricia can't join us. Maybe next time.
But I feel like I've officially become a radio personality because that was my second time on their show. And you, I think, have been on, how many times have you been on that?
2 or 3, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're now radio personalities again here.
Not just podcasters.
Exactly. There's a gravitas with radio. I think more people listen to podcasts than radio, but we are radio personalities now.
Great. I'll claim it. So for people who want to listen to that episode, it was quite an eclectic group of topics, ranging from the closure of Fred Meyer's in the Seattle region to an incident that happened at a Shakespeare in the Park performance. But you can check that out in the Seattle Now feed at KUOW.
Yeah, and just to sell it a little more, your fake headlines were classic. They had me in stitches. So okay. I think people want to listen for that.
The teaser. That's great. I love it.
You got to tease it.
So, Jeff, you actually are not just a professor of marketing, but are you the department chair now?
Yes. So I became the department chair for the Marketing and International Business Department here at the Foster School of Business July 1st.
Oh, congrats.
Thank you. Congrats and condolences. It's a whole new realm of responsibilities, but I am excited to see how can we more partner with companies. So this is why I'm glad to actually have an opportunity to your listeners, because I'd love to partner with some of the people around here to get more of what's happening in practice into our curriculum and to get our students out in the real world.
Tell me more about that. That's an interesting kind of way to start. Like, what are you seeing these days from your perch here at the Foster School of Business in terms of marketing and the realities of AI and sort of how that's impacting your students? And by the way, we've got some real news to talk about coming up later on, so stick around. But I'd be curious, just as a starting point, Jeff, to get a sense for the landscape based on what you're seeing.
Yeah, I've been teaching marketing for over 20 years now. And so marketing is still the way I taught it 20 years ago, segment, target, position, and then the 4 Ps, what price you set, what promotions you have, the placement, where the product is available, and the product, what product will delight customers. But this AI is such a huge paradigm shift, and social media and search word advertising, like those were fairly big paradigm shifts. And this feels cataclysmic. It's really going to affect how products are made. AI is going to affect how products are made. It's going to affect how people get information, and it's affecting how people make decisions. And so you have to understand AI if you want to be in marketing at this point.
I had Andy Sack and Adam Brotman, 2 branding professionals, on the podcast last week, and they had a conversation with Sam Altman where Sam Altman, the OpenAI CEO, said about 95% of marketing tasks will be replaced by AGI at some point. Does that seem like hyperbole to you, or does that seem on the mark based on what you're seeing?
It's getting kind of cliche at this point, but it's like you're not going to be replaced by AI. You'll be replaced by a smart human using AI. I think AI is expanding productivity in marketing in every field really, but in marketing, from how you get research about your competitors to how you get research about your customers, how you create ad copy. And so now where it would take people a month to come up with the magazine advertisement, you could have a display advertisement in seconds and have it deployed to millions of people almost instantly. So we're in a bizarre time.
So I got my degree partially in marketing. I did a double major in journalism and business, and marketing was my specialty. It's been a while, but I remember that a lot of the classes almost felt a little like trade school, where I was getting a sense, and this is at my university, I'm not speaking for the UW Foster School.
Thank you.
But it was somewhat tactical in that we learned how to do campaigns. We did very specific business modeling and exercises, and they were things that very much you would be applying to an entry-level job at a company in a marketing position. And obviously at a much higher level school like the University of Washington, I'm sure you were much more in the realm of theory and larger issues that students can apply and use for lifelong learning in the field. But I'm curious, how is AI impacting what gets taught in the classroom?
Yeah, I mean, this is what I think everybody is wrestling with, because the standard way that you and I took tests, the standard way that we did assignments, those can now be done in AI. And whether we ask them not to or tell them not to, the genie's out of the bottle, so to speak. And so the challenge now for all of us is to think about what mental skills and frameworks and thought processes are going to still add value now that AI exists. And how could you prepare not just for AI, but for the jobs in the future, wherever this AI world takes us. So I think we still need to get down to the basics of teaching students to think critically and to have a base of knowledge to be able to vet whether AI is telling the truth, not to blindly rely on what it spits out or what it creates. And so we do need to shift, though, like, how do we test whether people are thinking and becoming better critical thinkers?
Are there specific rules in the classroom or in the foster school, in the marketing department, that apply to student use of AI? Are there things that you tell them like, hey, we don't want you to do this? And are there ways to find out if they're breaking those rules? If so.
I mean, as well as I know, sometimes you could really see when somebody just used ChatGPT.
Yes.
And sometimes it includes a line from ChatGPT at the end of, would you like to know more? Or would you like me to keep going? So sometimes you could really spot it. But at this point, I can't really, I don't want to speak for the University of Washington or our marketing department as a whole, but our faculty have intellectual freedom to be able to create the best experience for our students. And my role is to try to give them the resources, whether that's connecting them with people like your listeners or, sharing best practices with them. But my goal is to help them prepare our students for the best future that we can.
You're going to go far as a department chair. I can tell. Very, very well practiced answer. That was good.
We'll see.
I don't speak on behalf of the university. It's the first things that need to be.
Definitely got to put that disclaimer out there. I'm speaking, the opinions represented here are my own and my own alone.
Well, you referenced a couple times the idea of working in partnership with people in industry.
Yeah.
And I know that a lot of that happens already at the Foster School, just from my own interactions with many of your professors and instructors. But what would you say to folks out there who might be at startups or might be in leadership positions at some of the larger companies here, especially in the Seattle region, about how they can engage with what you do at the Foster School?
Yeah, great question. We always look for dynamic guest speakers who could take not just the practice and the tried and true frameworks that we're studying pretty rigorously here at the University of Washington, but how they're put into practice and what are the tactics, as you were saying, like what are the tactics that are seeing now in the cutting edge. We love for our faculty to be able to interact with industry leaders so that we could get new ideas for what to study that will both add value to theory, but also to practice. And so basically my goal is to and I think our goal has long been to create this synergistic flywheel where knowledge gets created out of UW, it gets put in the hands of future leaders and our students, and those future leaders have a place to be hired locally and internationally. And then industry people have a place where they could give back to the next generation and where they can inspire some of that new cutting edge research that'll help their company and also put it into practice.
All right. I am speaking with Jeff Shulman. We are talking about the new age of AI, and there's actually a couple of interesting stories that came out this past week that relate to some of your interests in terms of Seattle's growth.
Yep.
And also, I cannot have you on this podcast, Jeff, without talking about the Sonics.
Absolutely.
For people who have followed your work over the years and your advocacy for the return of the Seattle Sonics to Seattle, we've got to talk about that this week. So stick around. We'll get into the first of those topics when we come back. You're listening to GeekWire. Welcome back. It's Todd Bishop. I'm on location this week at the University of Washington Foster School of Business with Jeff Shulman. He's a professor of marketing and the chair of the marketing department at the University of Washington's Foster School of Business. So, Jeff, we had two stories this past week on GeekWire that I think really dovetail with some of the research that you've done over the years and the work that you've done as the host of the former Seattle Growth Podcast.
Oh, the former. That
I'm
hurts.
sorry,
It's still
I'm
out
sorry.
there, just not
okay,
live.
Okay. The Seattle Growth Podcast, but you stopped updating it and putting out new episodes a few years ago.
Yeah.
Okay.
The former just hurts, so it'll cut deep.
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I get that. So the first was a deep dive that my colleague Taylor Soper did, GeekWire's editor, on the fact that despite being an AI hub, Seattle currently has no companies in the top 100 funding rounds for AI startups. And the second was a story by my colleague Lisa Stifler that kind of dovetailed with that. And I kind of put both of these under the umbrella of why not here? Why not in Seattle? And that was the fact that even though Seattle's home to Microsoft and Amazon and all sorts of cutting edge technologies, it's still not possible to hail a robo-taxi here because of regulatory and infrastructure hurdles that are blocking the path. And, you know, these are two things where I think we kind of look on the Bay Area with a little bit of jealousy. You know, my colleague John Cook went and he's used the Waymos in San Francisco a couple times. And that's what sparked one of these stories by Lisa was John saying, wait a second, why are these not in Seattle? Is this something we should be pining for in terms of these hot AI startups and these robo-taxis? What is your perspective on all of this?
Yeah, first I have to put it into context and share your surprise that this isn't happening here. So as I said, in the current Seattle Growth Podcast, it is on a little bit long of a hiatus. So I studied and talked to people about the past, present, and future, and what makes Seattle so innovative and what makes Seattle Seattle. And what's shocking is Seattle is known for experimentation. It's known for this kind of fearless independence. It's known for this, it's okay to fail and make mistakes, and it's okay to be different. And what's shocking then is that they're not experimenting with these robot taxis here, because this is like the place that I think for the most part forgives failure. As we talked about on the KOW show, you know, we're trying to modernize our ferries. We try to do things differently, and yet driverless cars not playing ball.
Yeah, and it seems like it's a failure in part of policy and regulation. Lisa got into this a little bit, but the whole notion was that in other states, they've really set an easy framework, or at least somewhat reliable framework, for these companies to come in and launch these robo-taxis and know that from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, they're going to be getting the same kind of treatment. And it's ironic in some ways because Amazon acquired one of these prominent robo-taxi companies a while back, Zoox, which is operating in Las Vegas. And so the question becomes like, what needs to happen for regulators, for legislators to make something like this happen at a first step? And then as a second step, do we want this to happen?
Yeah, that one I didn't touch because I don't know. I went down to LA and it is weird watching those with the cameras spinning around on those Waymo cars. And you're like, whoa, there's nobody there. It feels a little, I don't know. Me personally, I'm not ready to hop in a robo-taxi. But so I don't know if we wanted that. I can't speak to.
I will tell you, John Cook is the biggest skeptic based on a harrowing experience that many GeekWire podcast listeners will remember if you've been listening for a while in Pittsburgh with an Uber robo-taxi that he had.
Okay.
It was awful. And of course, Pittsburgh is known for its potholes and all that sort of thing. But John, in contrast, is sold on the Waymos.
Okay.
And so he was a very tough customer in that regard.
They won him over.
And it won him over.
And Seattle is now wondering, will it win us over here? And
yes.
I think, you know, Seattle is known for experimentation and for trying new things. I also believe there's some people who find the regulatory environment a bit challenging, especially when it comes to like building housing. That seems to be a challenge. That's where my expertise was in terms of people sharing that. So I could see where maybe that kind of red tape might be stopping that here. But I'm not sad about it. If you're looking for the personal take, I'm not sad about it.
So then there's the other issue that Taylor really explored, which is we've got these strong AI and cloud companies in Microsoft and Amazon.
Yeah.
And, well, at least strong cloud companies. And I guess you could debate whether they're strong AI companies at this point. But you don't have these cutting edge startups, the OpenAIs, the Anthropics, and countless other companies that you've got in Silicon Valley here. And that's really illustrated by the fact, as we said, that based on PitchBook data, Seattle currently has no companies in the top 100 funding rounds for AI startups.
Yeah.
And you look at all of the promise here, the people getting let go from Microsoft in particular.
Yeah.
And of course, that's a more recent phenomenon. But I'm just trying to wrap my head around why that isn't the case.
Yeah.
And what it means for the future of this region and our place in this new AI era. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, as I like to do in Seattle Growth Podcast, the current but on hiatus podcast, is, a lot of our answers for our future are hidden in our past. And so you look at the boom, some of the big booms here in Seattle, and you go back to the 40s when the Boeing boom came. And so you've got Boeing, flagship employer, bringing people from all over the country to work for them. And then you see shipyards and steel yards, and you see all these other businesses kind of pop up around that, building around that ecosystem. Then you go back as the Microsoft boom that you've covered extensively. Yep. And then more recently, the boom that got me inspired for my podcast is the Amazon boom. And so the Amazon boom, Amazon's magnetic to talent, brings people all over here. And then they want to do something new, so other companies locate here. And I really feel, as you were alluding to, we became the cloud capital of the world. We are the go-to place for the big companies doing cloud computing, which became the huge revenue driver. But now that virtuous cycle that we saw in the Boeing boom, that virtuous cycle we saw here in the cloud computing boom, that's now down, it seems like, in the Bay Area. And it's hard, once that's going, it's hard to then pull that up here, because it's like, oh, if you want the talent, it's down there. You want the vendors, they're down there. You want the partners, a lot of it is down there. I mean, we still have Amazon and Microsoft, but we have not become the AI capital of the world like we should have.
It's interesting because Microsoft and Amazon would both strongly dispute what I'm about to say.
Oh, okay. Controversy alert.
But Microsoft has heavily leaned on OpenAI for a lot of its innovation. And especially at the beginning of the generative AI boom, Amazon felt like it was on its heels. And Amazon would argue against this more than Microsoft. Let me tell you, Amazon, they've got a chip on their shoulder about this kind of assertion. But it makes me wonder whether that's having an impact, where the talent that might have otherwise gone to Seattle ended up in Silicon Valley because that's where the center of gravity was. And of course, we're dealing with decades-long momentum here for Silicon Valley. It's a much, much larger market. It's Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
It's Silicon Valley. But it feels in some ways like Microsoft and Amazon haven't helped to create the kind of environment that would lead to these AI startups. Not that it's their responsibility,
right? But
it doesn't feel like they've really helped.
It's hard to say, but certainly have not helped to the degree that, becoming this cloud computing capital of the world. Like there, it was both creating the industry, leading it, being synonymous with that industry, having vendors that were outside of their company, so the money didn't just go to them and stay there. So they used other vendors. And so I think we're not seeing that virtuous cycle with AI yet. And it's a missed opportunity, because if you think about it, when Amazon really heavily invested in Alexa, that was AI. I mean, people don't think of it the same way, but we weren't using the buzzword of AI as much then as we were now. But they brought a ton of AI talent here, and that could have spun into something as big as we're seeing happening in the Bay Area.
Yes, and I would actually point to Alexa, and with apologies to Panos Panay, who I've talked with a few times, like he would argue against this as well. And Panos has been on the podcast, the former Microsoft Surface chief, who is now leading the Alexa. It feels like Alexa is behind, and I've been using the Alexa Plus early access preview, and it's like, whereas you can point to something like AWS and say Amazon invented this. Like,
yeah.
They were the pioneers of cloud computing, and nobody can dispute that. To your point, Jeff, when you look at what's happening in AI, it's hard to point to the company in Seattle, the tech giant or otherwise, that really is pioneering things and not just following.
Yeah.
It's an interesting marketing discussion in some ways about being a follower.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when you have a big established company which is making a lot of money on your current lines of business, everything else is kind of a risk, right? So you have to make calculated risks to stay growing and alive, but it's going to favor somebody who's brand new and hungry and has nothing to lose by going all in on something. And then if it doesn't work out, we don't read about that one. But when it becomes open AI, that's when we're like, oh yeah, that was brilliant.
Yes, absolutely. You've also really in your work over the years, including a documentary that you did that's available on PBS, which is called
On the Brink.
On the Brink. You've also looked at some of the downsides of this growth in terms of equity in communities and housing prices and everything like that. In some ways, is it good to be a fast follower as a region to where you're not also charging ahead and being a pioneer of some of the dysfunction that this innovation can bring?
Yeah, I mean, you are right that as some people saw, shiny new buildings and a lot of job opportunities and economic wealth being created here in Seattle during this Amazon boom, other people saw their neighborhoods being destroyed, their friends and family moving away because they can't afford to live here, struggling to make ends meet or traveling even further to get to where they want to go. People pointed to traffic and who bears that burden. So in some sense, Seattle it felt like they would be ready for a breather. So,
yes.
But on the other hand, I feel like we got that breather. I feel like 2020 really put a pause, if not a reset, on what was happening in Seattle. And I'm not sure we've quite recovered from the pandemic back to the vibrancy that we had in 2019. In some sense, I think in 2019, people would be grateful that we're not also becoming the AI capital of the world. But I think we're also been a boom bust town, as when Boeing closed down in the 70s.
Yep.
And so I think I have that little bit of fear of like, okay, if we slow down too much or let somebody else become the AI capital, are we going to have the last one to leave Seattle turn out the lights sign again, or are we going to be okay?
I had fun with that a few years back. I can't remember the exact news peg that I used, but I sort of mocked up a new version of that sign that said, with the last one leaving Seattle, please ask Alexa to turn out the lights.
I like that.
I have to ask, when or if you bring the Seattle Growth Podcast out of hiatus, what would be top of mind for you in terms of episodes or focus? Like in this era in 2025, if you were to find time in your busy schedule to restart the podcast, what would you be thinking about?
This is it, actually. So this is really on my mind of what does AI mean for our city? How are we as a city or the people and the organizations in it, how are we leveraging it? How are we pushing it forward? And what will our city look like in the age of, AI agents, where a lot of the jobs that people came from all over the world to come to Seattle to do, a lot of those jobs are being done by half the number of people, a quarter of the number of people, and those people are using AI. That's my big question is, what's this mean for our city? And what's it mean for the companies and the people within it?
Well, you've got one listener right here.
Thank you.
Will tell you that. Jeff, as I said, I can't have you on the podcast without talking about the Sonics, and we'll explain why in just a second. That's coming up after the break. You're listening to GeekWire. I'm sitting here with Jeff Shulman in his office at the Foster School at the University of Washington, and I'm looking across and I'm seeing a Dennis Rodman jersey in a frame in your office, which I know is a gift to you. So how does a Chicago Bulls fan end up coming to Seattle and becoming one of the biggest public champions of bringing the Seattle Sonics back here.
Yeah. Yes. So the On Location has its downsides. Now the whole world knows of my Dennis Rodman jersey.
Sorry.
That is okay. I welcome it. So I am a Bulls fan. I actually, when I was a grad student, organized selling 250 tickets so that I could play on the court where Michael Jordan won 3 of his 6 championships.
Was it like a promotion that they did?
Yeah, they used to, if you bought enough tickets that before the game, you get to play on the court.
Amazing.
Yeah, so I super loved the Bulls and moved out here in 2006 and went to a couple of Sonics games. And it was not too long after I moved here that the team was sold to somebody who is in Oklahoma City. And then they told everybody that they're not going to move the team. And of course, they moved the team.
Let me summarize that for you.
Yeah.
It was not long after you moved here that we were robbed.
Yes, that's one way to put it. The city was robbed. You were robbed. I was not robbed because I had my Bulls, but I was robbed of my opportunity to see the Bulls twice a year. So I was disappointed. But how the whole thing started is that I was looking at Seattle's past, present, and future. And in that, there was starting to be a big debate about, do we bring the Sonics back, the Seattle Supersonics, the basketball team that was here? And if so, where? And I saw, just like what started the podcast, is two sides not listening to each other and not having like a lot of respect for the other. So fans who really wanted it down in Soto didn't want an arena be built in Climate Pledge. What was Seattle? Key Arena. And fans of Key Arena didn't want it to be down in Soto because there's the port activity and so on. So I really just approached it of, this is a chance. My podcast is about dialogues of divergent views. This is a chance to just listen and just see. And in doing that, I really saw Seattle basketball was such a big deal. We have some greats like Jamal Crawford's from here. We had Brandon Roy come through here. Like there's so Nate Robinson. And we have so much basketball talent and such an infrastructure, largely because of the Sonics. People like Lenny Wilkins, Detlef Schrempf, Slick Watts, giving back to the community here and really making it and investing in the future talent. And so I saw that, wow, this is such an iconic basketball town that I didn't realize. I saw what it meant to people from all economic and racial backgrounds and just how painful it was to see them pulled away. And just a few years, and when you think about it, from one of its recent heydays. And so I wanted to do what I could to have people channel their enthusiasm in a positive way to express to city council, like, where do they want them and why do they want them?
What was the day called?
Sonic Boom Day. Yeah. And I was on your podcast, I think, the GeekWire podcast, because we were talking about, back then, it was a real question of what this would mean for the tech industry, because South Lake Union was already taxed too much in terms of traffic, and so putting an arena and 17,000 people there regularly, what was it going to do? But I think from what I could tell, it's been okay.
It seems like they handle the concerts well. You know, I've come out of Kraken games there, huge crowds, and they've just got the logistics down.
Yeah.
So in some ways, you know, I think if I'm not mistaken, there was discussion about like sort of autonomous aircraft or something like,
that was floated during this process.
I was like, what?
Yeah.
Anyway, looking back on that was a little nuts.
Yeah.
And I think we recognized that at the time. So every summer, it seems, the NBA Board of Governors meets, and I'm sure they meet more frequently than that, but they just met recently. And I was looking at that meeting and going, gosh, doesn't it seem like it's time? I mean, I don't follow it that closely, but I know the media deal has been done. Yep. They seem to have some of their economics worked out.
Yep.
The Trailblazers are for sale, so perhaps we're going to get a test of the market in terms of the value of a new franchise.
Yep.
And so I was thinking, and perhaps naively, that we might see out of that meeting an announcement that we would have new franchises in Seattle and Las Vegas.
Yeah, I think people are ready for this announcement. And my fear, so I did this podcast, as we know, many years ago, but the people who truly love the Sonics, I mean, that was now almost 20 years ago. I mean, that's pretty long time when you think about it.
Yes.
And so, yes, there's people who want basketball here. And yes, there's still those diehards, but how many people are in there, like, spending money on basketball days that still like have that love and passion for the Supersonics in particular?
Interesting. We're losing it a little bit.
Yeah, especially when you go back to the housing affordability, how many of them moved away
during the pandemic?
Yeah, but the diehards who are still there, this has to feel like Lucy with the football. They keep thinking that we're getting a team here in Seattle, and it just doesn't seem to happen.
If I told you about my Halloween costume last year?
No, what was this?
I got a Sonics jersey, Sonics shorts, green socks, headband, and I called myself the overly optimistic Sonics fan. But the cool thing was, I am merched up.
Yeah, you were ready.
Whenever they come back, and I mean when, not if, but when. I'm convinced. And I got to say, I hear what you're saying, that we're sort of losing the memories, the institutional and the community memories of what this team meant. And I'm not from Seattle originally. I'm from California, but I got to see the Sonics play many times in that horrible old version of that arena, Key Arena, the old Coliseum, I guess. It wasn't called that at the time, but that's what it was. And every time I see a hockey game or a WNBA game at Climate Pledge Arena, I just sit back and think how wonderful it's going to be.
Yeah.
And I hope that there's enough institutional pride and community pride to really welcome this team back when it comes back.
Yeah. And a shout out to Jamal Crawford. I know he's listening right now. But
big fan of the GeekWire podcast, Jamal.
Please write to Todd and let him know that you are, in fact, listening. So Jamal Crawford, NBA, I think almost a 2-decade NBA career, but always came back here and hosted the Classic. So I think that keeps some of the excitement of basketball going, and things like that really do make a difference in carrying forward that legacy that was so strong.
So to make this more relevant to tech, which is obviously the subject of this podcast, do you see in the current tech community the capital and the resources and the momentum, or even the people who could come together to back a new Sonics team?
Yeah, I thought we'd kind of spitball on different billionaires in our region. So what do you think? Is it going to be Jeff Bezos? Is that...
If I were to pick, that would be my pick, but I want to hear your thoughts. We know it's not going to be Steve Ballmer.
Yeah.
Because he is just dedicated to LA. I think it would be a situation that's just not going to happen.
Which was devastating. I think we need to have a pause and reflect that is related to tech. I mean, people did think that Ballmer would be the big money behind this, and then he raised the market. I think he paid $2 billion for the Clippers, which was well above what any franchise had sold before. There was still hope that maybe that was his test and then he'd come by here. But I think you're right. He built the new arena. He's building like a college basketball environment, and he's doing a lot of cool things down there.
Yeah. Talk about some product innovation.
Yeah.
Have you seen like the wall that they do in there with the fans? And they're only those Clippers fans, like they almost have to pass a loyalty test in some ways, and they can't sit down. And it's actually a really cool product innovation.
Yep. So I think it'd be fun to dream what would Jeff Bezos do with the Sonics if he were the one to bring them back.
I think it could be Bezos, and my colleague Curt Schlosser. I'm dropping the names of everybody on the team this week.
Yeah.
He has a theory because there's always been the speculation that Bezos might buy the Seahawks.
Yeah.
And to be clear, the Seahawks are not for sale by the Allen estate, by the estate of the late Microsoft co-founder Paul Allen. They're not currently for sale, but there's the widespread assumption that at some point they will be, and that Jeff Bezos would be a leading candidate. Curt's theory, Curt Schlosser, my colleague, his theory is that it's much more likely for Jeff Bezos to buy a basketball team because he would get to sit on the sidelines courtside. And it's not quite the same feel as being like Taylor Swift up in the luxury box.
Yeah.
So NBA would be more likely for Bezos.
You definitely feel like a superstar celebrity when you're sitting on. I mean, I definitely 99% think that that's what it would be like. I've never gotten to do it, but I'd imagine sitting courtside in front of the games that, you're like the person. Like people want to pay attention. So I get where you're coming from. I could see that.
Yeah, absolutely. Waving across the court at Eddie Vedder.
Yeah.
Or sitting next to,
Probably sitting next to Eddie Vedder.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know. And also, that's another question. Who, if you were Jeff Bezos and you had the courtside seats of your choosing, who do you sell the seat next to you to?
Sell or give?
Give? Yeah, I mean.
Wow, this is like getting into my Seattle celebrity know-how. That I'll come up with a million names later. Maybe we should ask ChatGPT.
Yeah, we might have to do that. But the other news that is relevant, wasn't it Ken Griffey Jr. wants to be a part of bringing the Sonics back?
Yes.
And so it's got to happen, but every day they wait to expand, that price tag seems to be going up.
Yes.
Sports teams' valuations are skyrocketing. The WNBA teams are skyrocketing. MLS teams, NBA teams, all of these sports are skyrocketing in franchise values. It's pricing out many of our billionaires.
Which is a funny thing to say.
When billionaires can't buy a sports team for their hometown, what is the world coming to? Should we put a GoFundMe
for Jeff Bezos so he can buy the Sonics? Wow, that's going to be a hard one to get behind.
Yeah, I think Bezos can buy it, but I think that a lot of our billionaires are priced out on this franchise now.
Yeah, well, it would make so much sense for Bezos, in part because of the name of the arena. I mean, he was the one who originally announced the climate pledge at Amazon. And so I could see the stars really aligning. The only downside is that he's not really in Seattle anymore.
Yeah, that's why I'm a little nervous now, to be perfectly honest, because it just takes somebody who's really invested in the community. Because as high as the skyrocketing valuations, they also require a lot of money on a day-to-day basis. So when I interviewed the ownership that sold the team to Clay Bennett, I mean, there was a great quote from one of my guests: even rich guys don't like to write checks. So when you got to keep putting more money in, not everybody wants to do that.
I got an idea. Let's just bury the hatchet and bring Howard Schultz back in. Okay, non-starter.
I can only say that several of the people who are interviewed on my podcast and who listen to the podcast would not be okay with your comment.
I was kidding, folks. I was kidding. Don't.
Your listenership, if you could track it by the second it just dropped, it plummeted. All the Sonics fans just click and not coming back.
Oh, poor Howard. All right. Well, Jeff, this is great. I'm really glad we did the after show, the after party. And again, if folks want to hear our opinions on such matters as Shakespeare in the Park and Fred Meyer closures, just go to KUOW, look for the Seattle Now podcast. We had a fun conversation there, but it's fun to dig into things that we actually know about.
I was going to say, if you...
Or at least we think we know about.
Yeah.
All right. Jeff Shulman is a professor of marketing and the chair of the University of Washington's marketing department at the Foster School of Business. He's the founding director of the Product Management Center. And you can also still find episodes of the Seattle Growth Podcast.
Yes, some would argue it's not a former podcast, but that it's more relevant today than ever before as we wonder what's going to happen to our future. Let's look back at our just 5 year ago recent future.
Perfect. I love how you're selling this thing. All right, everybody. Curt Milton edited this episode. I'm GeekWire co-founder Todd Bishop. We'll be back next week with a new episode of the GeekWire Podcast.